The world won't believe until you do. Every great idea, every bold vision, every world-changing movement begins in the mind of one person. Before the speeches, before the applause, before the recognition, there is a moment of absolute solitude, a moment where the only believer is you. And that moment is the most critical of all, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. The world is built on proof. The people believe in things they can see, touch, and measure. They trust what is familiar, what is safe, what has already been accepted. But innovation, progress, and greatness do not come from what already exists. They come from someone willing to see what others cannot, to take a step before the path is even visible. The challenge is that most people will not recognize your vision until it has materialized. They won't believe in your ability until you have already succeeded. This is why belief must start with you. If you need others to validate your dreams before you pursue them, you will never begin. If you rely on external approval to fuel your confidence, you will run out of energy before you even make it halfway. And that evidence begins with the unwavering conviction that what you see in your mind is real, even when no one else sees it yet. Think about the pioneers of history, the people who changed industries, transformed societies, or redefined what was possible. They all faced the same resistance at first. They were doubted, questioned, sometimes even ridiculed. Why? Because they saw something the world wasn't ready to accept. But they did not wait for permission. They moved forward with belief so strong that eventually the world had no choice but to catch up. And yet, most people never get past the first stage. They share their ideas too soon, waiting for someone to nod in agreement, to say, yes, that makes sense, you should do it. And when that validation doesn't come, they hesitate. They start questioning themselves, and they allow the doubt of others to seep into their own minds, and before long they abandon the idea altogether, not because it was impossible, but because they mistook early doubt as final judgment. Belief is not just a mindset, it's a discipline. It's waking up every day and choosing to trust yourself even when the results haven't shown up yet. It's reminding yourself that just because no one believes now doesn't mean no one ever will. It's understanding that success is not about convincing people to believe in you, but about proving to yourself that you were right all along. The hardest part of any journey is the beginning because it's the loneliest. But this is also the most important test. It is the filter that separates those who need permission from those who create their own destiny. If you can believe in yourself in the absence of support, in the face of skepticism, and in the quiet moments of uncertainty, then you have already won half the battle. Great things start in silence. Before every great achievement, before every breakthrough, before every revolution, there is silence. The silence of an empty room where an idea is born. The silence of late nights spent working when no one is watching. The silence of uncertainty, where doubt creeps in and no one is there to reassure you. This silence is not an absence of action. It is the birthplace of all things that matter. We live in a world that glorifies noise. The loudest voices get the most attention. The busiest schedules are seen as the most productive, and the biggest announcements are celebrated as success. But what we don't often see is what happens before all that, the quiet moments where the real work is done, the invisible effort that lays the foundation for everything people will later admire. The world only sees the result. It rarely witnesses the process. Silence is where thoughts deepen, where ideas evolve, where strategies take shape. It is in the moments of solitude that clarity emerges. When you are alone with your thoughts, without distractions, without external opinions, you begin to hear your own voice. And that voice is the only one that matters in the beginning. It is in these silent hours that creativity flourishes, when the mind is free to explore without judgment, without interruption. History proves that silence is the companion of greatness. The greatest writers spent years alone with their words before their books changed lives. The greatest inventors toiled in obscurity, perfecting their creations before the world took notice. But the greatest leaders had moments of deep reflection before they stood in front of crowds. None of them started with noise. They started in silence, where they could think, refine, and prepare for what was to come. But silence is uncomfortable for most people. We crave validation, interaction, and immediate feedback. We want to know that what we are doing matters, that people approve, that our efforts are seen. And when those signs don't come right away, doubt starts creeping in. We start questioning ourselves, wondering if we're wasting time, wondering if we should stop. But silence is not an indication of failure. It is a test of endurance. It is where patience is built, where resilience is formed, where true belief is tested. The struggle in silence is where strength is developed. The moments when you push forward, even when no one is watching, are the moments that define you. Because if you can persist in silence, if you can keep going when no one is cheering you on, then you are building something real. Something that doesn't rely on applause to survive. Something that will stand on its own when the time comes. There is a reason why seeds grow underground before they break the surface. There is a reason why mountains take millions of years to form before they are admired. There is a reason why the most powerful ideas are often laughed at before they are respected. Because everything that is truly great begins where no one else is looking, in the silence, in the unseen work, in the moments that feel like nothing is happening, but in reality, everything is. Waiting for approval is a trap. From the time we are young, we are taught to seek approval. We raise our hands in class and wait to be called on. We submit our work and wait for a grade. We share our ideas and wait for someone to tell us they are good enough. This pattern becomes ingrained in us, and before we realize it, we start believing that we need permission to move forward in life. But the truth is, waiting for approval is one of the greatest traps we can fall into. When we wait for approval, we give away our power. We put our dreams, our decisions, and our future in the hands of others who may not see what we see, who may not share our vision, or who may not even have the courage to believe in something outside of what is familiar. And so we wait, hoping for validation, hoping for reassurance, hoping for someone else to give us the green light to take the next step. But while we wait, time moves forward. Opportunities pass. Momentum fades. The harsh reality is that not everyone will understand your path. Not everyone will support your decisions. Some people will project their own fears onto you. Others will be too focused on their own limitations to recognize your potential. And some simply won't care. If you rely on the approval of others to move forward, you may never move at all. Because think about the people who have made a lasting impact in the world. They did not wait for approval. They did not pause until everyone agreed with them. They moved forward when no one believed, when they were told they were wrong, when they were doubted and dismissed. The greatest innovators, leaders, and creators understood that approval is often given after success, not before it. The world rarely recognizes greatness in its early stages. It only celebrates it once it has proven itself. But many people never reach that point because they allow disapproval to stop them. A single negative opinion, a skeptical look, or a dismissive comment can be enough to make someone second-guess themselves. And once that doubt takes root, it becomes difficult to move forward with confidence. The irony is that most of the people we seek approval from are not even taking risks themselves. They are not stepping outside their comfort zones. They are not pursuing bold ideas, yet we give their opinions the power to dictate our choices. The need for approval can also lead to compromise. When we shape our actions based on what others will accept, we start playing it safe. We hold back. We adjust our ideas to fit within the expectations of those around us. And in doing so, we dilute our originality. We lose the very thing that made our vision unique in the first place. The more we wait for permission, the more we become a reflection of what others want rather than a true expression of who we are. This need for validation is often rooted in fear, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of being alone in our decisions. But growth does not happen in the safety of approval. It happens in the uncertainty of risk. It happens when you take a step forward, not because someone told you it was okay, but because you knew deep down that you had to. It happens when you stop asking for permission and start trusting yourself. Not everyone will understand every person who dares to think differently, to challenge the norm, to create something new, or to take an unconventional path, will, at some point, face the reality that not everyone will understand. This is one of the hardest lessons for those who dream big, realizing that the people around them, even those they respect or love, may not see what they see. It can be frustrating, discouraging, and even isolating. But it is an inevitable part of doing something meaningful. Most people view the world through the lens of their own experiences, their own fears, and their own limitations. When you present an idea, a goal, or a vision that does not fit into their frame of reference, their instinct is often to dismiss it. Not necessarily because they don't believe in you, but because they cannot imagine it for themselves. And what people cannot imagine, they struggle to accept. This is why so many great thinkers, artists, and innovators have faced doubt, criticism, and even rejection in the early stages of their journey. They saw something others did not. They believed in something that had not yet been proven. And because of that, they were questioned, misunderstood, and often discouraged. But what separated them from the rest was their willingness to keep going despite the doubt of others. One of the biggest traps we fall into is expecting others to validate our path before we move forward. We assume that if an idea is truly great, people will immediately recognize it. But history proves otherwise. Some of the most revolutionary ideas were initially met with laughter, skepticism, and outright resistance. If those individuals had waited for universal approval before taking action, the world would have never seen their contributions. It is human nature to seek understanding, to want to be supported and encouraged. But the reality is, not everyone will share your vision. Some will question your choices. Some will try to talk you out of it. And some will even criticize you, not because they are against you, but because they are afraid of what they don't understand. This is where many people give up. Not because they lack ability, but because they mistake a lack of understanding for a lack of possibility. The more you grow, the more you will notice this pattern. As you take steps towards something bigger, you will find that some people will distance themselves from you. Some will doubt you more than ever. Some may even become resentful. This is not a reflection of your failure. It is a reflection of the fact that you are evolving beyond what they can comprehend. And that is okay. Growth often requires you to walk a path that others are not ready to walk. The key is to learn the difference between advice and limitation. There will be times when people offer genuine wisdom that can help you, but there will also be times when people project their own fears onto you. Understanding this difference is crucial. Just because someone doesn't see your vision does not mean it isn't real. Just because they wouldn't take the risk doesn't mean you shouldn't. Their understanding is not a requirement for your success. Courage is doing it before you're ready. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that we need to be fully prepared before we take the first step. We convince ourselves that we need more time, more experience, more knowledge, more of something before we begin. But the truth is, no one ever truly feels ready. Readiness is an illusion, a comfortable excuse that keeps us from stepping into the unknown. The people who accomplish great things are not the ones who waited until they felt ready. They are the ones who moved forward despite the uncertainty. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the face of it. It is standing at the edge of something new, something unknown, and taking the step anyway. If you wait until the fear disappears, you will wait forever. Fear does not go away before you start. It fades only after you take action. The moment you do something, you prove to yourself that it was possible all along. And that proof builds confidence, which in turn builds momentum. Think about every major achievement in history. The greatest leaders, innovators, and creators did not begin with absolute certainty. They had doubts. They had moments where they questioned themselves. But they acted anyway. They started before they felt prepared because they understood that preparation alone does not create progress. The only way to truly become ready is by doing. We are conditioned to believe that preparation leads to confidence, but it is actually the opposite. Confidence comes from doing. You don't become a great speaker by practicing in front of a mirror forever. You become great by stepping onto a stage and speaking. You don't become a successful entrepreneur by endlessly researching business strategies. You learn by launching something, making mistakes, and adjusting along the way. No amount of planning can replace the lessons that come from real experience. This is why so many people remain stuck. They believe they need a perfect plan before they can begin. But perfection is just another form of procrastination. The reality is, your first attempt will not be perfect, no matter how much you prepare. You will make mistakes. You will have setbacks. But those mistakes are not proof that you weren't ready. They are proof that you are in the process of becoming ready. Every misstep is a lesson. Every failure is a stepping stone, and every risk is an opportunity to grow. What separates those who succeed from those who don't is not intelligence, talent, or even luck. It is the willingness to begin before feeling fully prepared. Most people wait for certainty, for guarantees, for a moment when they feel completely secure in their abilities. But the truth is, that moment never comes. The only way to gain certainty is by stepping into the uncertainty and figuring it out along the way. Courage is about trusting yourself even when the path is unclear. It is about knowing that you will never have all the answers before you start, but you will find them as you go. The greatest opportunities in life are not handed to those who feel ready. They are taken by those who refuse to let fear hold them back. The only way to prove to yourself that you are capable is to act before you have all the answers. Lone efforts lead to collective change. Every great movement, every revolution, every transformation in history began with one person, one mind, one vision, one relentless belief that something needed to change. It is easy to think that change is only possible when a large group of people come together. But the truth is, the spark always starts with an individual. The world does not change because everyone agrees at once. It changes because one person dares to stand alone before others join. Most people underestimate the power of individual action. They believe that real change requires a committee, a team, a movement from the very beginning. But if you look at history, you will see that every major shift, whether in business, politics, science, or culture, was ignited by someone who chose to act before there was widespread support. They were willing to take the first step without waiting for permission, approval, or backup. At first, lone efforts often go unnoticed. The world does not immediately recognize those who challenge the status quo. The people who take the first steps towards something new often face skepticism, criticism, and even resistance. But they persist. They work in the shadows, refining their ideas, pushing through setbacks, and continuing forward when no one is watching. And then, slowly, something shifts. Others start paying attention. The effort that once seemed isolated begins to inspire. This is how collective change is born, not from a massive organized movement from the start, but from one person's decision to act despite being alone. One person's courage to question the norm. One person's willingness to take responsibility when others remain silent. The first voice, the first act, the first attempt, it is always met with doubt. But once the effort gains momentum, what was once a lone pursuit becomes a shared mission. People are drawn to conviction. They are inspired by those who are willing to stand firm in their beliefs, even when it is uncomfortable. This is why lone efforts do not stay lone for long. When someone dares to move forward despite resistance, they unknowingly give others permission to do the same. Those who were afraid to speak up suddenly find their voice. Those who doubted themselves begin to believe. Change does not begin with the collective. It begins with the courage of the individual. This applies not only to grand historical movements, but to everyday life. A single entrepreneur can redefine an industry. A single teacher can transform a struggling student's future. A single act of kindness can ripple through a community. The mistake people make is believing that their efforts are too small to matter, that their lone action will not create impact. But no great change has ever started with a crowd. It always starts with one. The challenge is that acting alone requires an unusual kind of strength. It demands resilience in the face of doubt, perseverance in the absence of support, and faith in an idea that has not yet been proven. Many people never take this step because they assume that if something were truly possible, others would already be doing it. But the reality is, most people are waiting for someone else to take the risk, to go first, to prove that it can be done. Lone efforts are not insignificant. They are the foundation of every great movement. The world may not notice at first. People may not understand. But with enough persistence, what begins as an individual effort has the power to shape the future. Once you lead, others will follow. Most people are waiting for someone else to take the first step. They hesitate, unsure if the path is worth walking, uncertain if their ideas are valid, and afraid of standing alone. But the moment one person dares to move, everything changes. Leadership is not about titles, authority, or permission. It is about action. The first person to act, to take the risk, to go beyond hesitation and doubt, becomes the one that others follow. The world is full of unspoken potential, of people who want to do something meaningful but are held back by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of standing alone. But when someone steps forward, when they move despite uncertainty, they give others permission to do the same. It is not that people lack the desire to act. It is that they lack the courage to be first. And that is what leadership is. The willingness to move forward before there is any guarantee that others will join. At first, leading can feel isolating. The leader walks alone, often misunderstood, sometimes doubted, occasionally mocked. It can feel like no one is paying attention, like the effort is wasted. But what most people don't realize is that others are watching. Quietly, cautiously, they observe. They may not immediately follow, but they are taking note. They are waiting to see if the risk pays off, if the effort is real, if the path is worth taking. And then something shifts. The moment one person leads with conviction, others begin to gather, not all at once, not loudly, but slowly, subtly. They start stepping forward. One person taking action makes it easier for another. The once lonely effort begins to look like a movement. What seemed impossible now seems within reach. And all of it happens because someone had the courage to be first. History is filled with examples of this. The most significant movements, innovations, and revolutions began with a single individual taking action before there was widespread support. The first to challenge a broken system. The first to introduce a new idea. The first to go against the grain. These people were not necessarily the most powerful or the most skilled. They were simply the ones willing to act. And because they acted, others followed. Leadership does not mean having all the answers. It does not require perfection. It simply requires a willingness to go first, to step into uncertainty, to take the risks that others are afraid to take. Most people do not follow words. They follow actions. They follow conviction. They follow those who are willing to do what others only talk about. The greatest leaders in history did not inspire people with theories. They inspired them with movement. The mistake many people make is waiting until they feel fully prepared before they lead. But leadership is not about being ready. It is about stepping forward despite the uncertainty. No one feels completely ready before they start. Confidence does not come before action. It is built through action. The courage to lead, even in the smallest of ways, has the power to create change that reaches further than we ever imagined.